Thank you once again for coming back to Mental Health Bar, watching us. This week, me, Chris Purchase Green, has the wonderful actor Rufus Hound with me. Thank you very much for joining me, Rufus.
Thank you for inviting me for this long-standing commitment to be on the MHB.
Yeah, it has. I mean, we've had this in the diary for what? Months? Years?
2000. Has it had it been the millennium?
I'm not even sure. I think we were talking about this and we were like, if the bug happens, we won't be able to record this. That's what I think was the main problem.
Yeah, that was our concern, was that we wanted to leave enough time to get over the millennium bug striking.
That was it. I couldn't hire a tech who would be able to do it. They were all booked out. That was the problem.
We allowed for the fact that the millennium bug might act like an EPG. And so it was that we would have to both mine our own iron and then magnetize it in order to make the tape that would eventually become this podcast. But I think, weirdly, we could have then just brought that date forward.
We could have done. I mean, all that training for nothing. All the mining. I've still got all that iron.
Looking back, I mean, that was a big commitment. We bought that mine together.
We got that mine, and then a bloody Elon Musk bought it off us. That bastard.
I still say what he said about you was unfair.
I know, mate. I don't know what he's got. He's got a problem with gingers. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, that's evidence for you.
There
was a New Zealand comic called Chris Brain who had one of the best lines I ever heard in my life, where a guy who'd already been spoken to in the crowd had revealed himself to be from South Africa. Anyway, Chris was doing a piece of material about doing drugs, and he said, has anyone here ever taken acid? And this guy in the front row put his hand up, and Chris just looked at him and went, oh, the South African, tell me, did you see all colours, or was it just all black and white?
Oh my God.
One of the most incredible off the cuff.
Yeah.
I mean, just the entire room stood and just knew that it had been in the presence of one of the all-time great ad-libs.
See, that is one of those in-the-moment things, and also one of the only times where I believe the person where they say, and everybody clapped. Because that is absolute. I would have been at the back. I would have been, but boombox in the air, brilliant moment, mate. John Cusack in the shower. That as an ex-comic who would have loved that. I would have loved to have been able to have been there. And you remembered his name, so I don't know if you knew him personally anyway. But if you remember a comic's name for an ad lib, it means it's one of the best. One of the best.
Well, this was in the early days of us doing stand-up. I think he'd done stand-up in New Zealand and then came here for a while. And was an absolute hooligan. We had some very fun nights together, Chris and I. And then he returned to New Zealand, where I think he's now teetotal and straight edge.
Teetotal and straight edge.
I think, yeah.
I think that as a comedian.
He's very good. He's very funny.
Is he still a comedian, yeah?
I just see him tweet, so I actually don't know. Maybe I think so. I mean, this is the biggest name I could possibly drop. This is one of my all-time big name drop stories. But the night that I quit doing stand-up, I slid the mic into the stand at the Comedy Store and walked from the stage to the dressing room. And as I did, this little monologue went off in my head of like, well, old son, you made it. When you started doing stand-up, you only had one dream, and that was to be able to play the store regularly. And Don Ward himself phoned you and asked you to compare New Year's Eve. You helped him out the last minute. You've always done well here. And, so many of the great stand-ups in this country played on this stage regularly. Well done, old boy, well done. And I walked into the dressing room and there was Eddie Izzard. And I couldn't believe it. He hadn't been there when I'd walked on stage. So he'd got in there. Anyway, a little bit of time goes by and I'm talking to him and I say to him, I can't tell you how bizarre this is, that here you are, the man who, when I started out doing stand-up, I just sounded like you. I grew up sounding like you. People would stop me in the street and say, you don't sound like Eddie Izzard. It was because I just loved you so much. I got into your pattern of thinking, your way of thinking. like I had to work out when I started doing stand up how to not sound like I sounded in real life, so that I didn't sound like you doing stand up.
Yeah.
So it really brings this journey full circle. Because from this point on, I'm not a stand up anymore. And he said to me, "Oh no, that's not how it works. You're always a stand up. You're just a stand up who's not doing stand up. You're a stand up doing other things, but you'll come back to it. Everyone comes back to it because you're never not one."
Oh.
And this like curtain that was almost down, like that's almost of my life, literally, from a hero of mine, was like, "No, don't close that just yet. Leave it fucked up. Leave it ajar. Leave it pushed on."
Got the key under the rock. Eddie Izzard's left that key under the rock there for you. That's so weird, because you tweeted at me the other day that you think that we're like the same person, and I had the same problem. So I'm with Eddie Izzard, to the point where I used to do the like, not in stand up, not before, but like in public and stuff, and I ended up doing all the mannerisms, and I even like lunge. Like even now I can't stop lunging, and it's just because as I grew up, that was what, with Glorious and all of those things, Dressed to Kill, grew up with all of that. Are we similar ages? What are we? Am I? Because I think you're younger than me.
I think you're younger than me, and I think that it's going to be distressing because I think you're about 6 years younger than me.
6 years isn't that much. That's not that much.
No, it's not. It's not that much, but it's enough.
Are you in your 40s?
I'm 42.
Oh, you're 42. So it's not. We're only 4 years apart.
Okay.
So, or 3 years. Like in a month is 3. It's like nothing, mate. You get nothing.
It's practically nothing.
Practically nothing. If we were in school, you would have ignored the shit out of me. That's how
I'd have been doing my A levels before you were even halfway through your GCSEs.
That's so slow, mate. That's all it was. It's just no need to point it out. No. I agree. But you say my wife and I, that's the same age difference my wife and I have. So this is not me suggesting you join our throuple, but we're
it's not you not suggesting that quite.
It's not suggesting.
Practically the same person. I mean, it's a weird thing to do, to invite me on the podcast in order to eventually manoeuvre into a situation where you and I.
It's weird, but it's not the weirdest. I accidentally suggested to Tom Stade that might be a thing as well, and it was so I was a big Tom Stade fan, and I'd got, again, it's always at the Comedy Store. I was at the Comedy Store in London, and I was doing like the gong, the shitty gong, which
gong show Tuesday night.
I'm never doing it again. Luckily, this is the last time, and this was like 8 years ago. And I did. So I was coming, like, walking to the stage to like sit down, and it was sitting down with Matt Richardson. Matt Richardson was also there long before either of us were doing anywhere close to full-time work. And Tom Stade walked past, and we were like, "It's Tom Stade. It's Tom Stade."
Yeah.
And I just, like 2 weeks ago, before that, I'd done my first Jongleurs, and Tom had been there. It had been Tom opening, then me, then Hal Cruttenden, then. I can't remember him, but he doesn't do stand-up anymore. And then Tony Hendricks was closing, and Kane Brown.
I mean, you'd
be
be
the MC.
at half time, and you'd have the best of that show, haven't you?
Yes, exactly. I was like, I was glad. The thing was, I was glad that I went on after. So I went on after Tom Stade before Hal Cruttenden. So I was like, because I was just doing 10, and I was like, I was so glad, because otherwise I would have had. They would have had those two, and then it's me. And then it's But anyway, so Tom walks down. I'm like, I'm going to talk to him. When you're like a bit starstruck, we're at the Comedy Store anyway, a bit starstruck. I get up and I'm like, "Oh, Tom, hello," and he's like, "Oh, I remember me from 2 weeks ago. I was in Jongleurs." He was like, "Yeah, sort of." He doesn't remember me at all. But he's trying to be a nice guy. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I just want to say, we didn't get a chance to speak on the night. Really." I really respect you. Great comic. You're actually my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, as favourite comedian. We really like your jokes. And he was like, "Oh, good, thanks, mate." And I was like, "Yeah." And I don't know why I said it. I was like, "Sometimes, I'll put on one of your routines to get things going." And he was like, "All right." And then he just walked off. He didn't even. I was just that, but you do when you. That's our reaction, like you say, an off the cuff thing. You say it, your mouth's faster than your brain, and I mean, it's fun. It's funny. It's just we didn't know each other, so it's odd.
But also sometimes it's so sometimes you can like mine the best material out of like, well, I'll just say a thing, and then I'll work out how I make that make sense after I've said it.
Yeah, I'll justify this.
I wrote an entire comedy special that way over years of comparing, going, I suppose the next logical thing to say would be this. I wonder how that would fit into this routine.
Yeah.
And just basically trial and error it until there was 70 minutes of it.
I mean, I genuinely think so. I had a chat with another comic called So I didn't want to turn this into like a comic thing, but I had a chat with Garrett Millerick, very good comic, and he has a technique called the bookcase, where you leave your material behind you in your head on like a bookcase, and you know it's there to go back to, and you just pull the material out and read it off if you need to, but until you need to, you just keep saying things until the audience stops laughing. And this was like, I was having a bit of a crisis of career like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and he was like, just try this, and that took my stand up from one level to an entirely new level, because you just get completely out of your comfort zone. But some of the stuff you come out with is just, you just realize you must have been a broken individual. Some of the darkest, evilest shit I've ever said.
I swear to God, I hope nobody ever, I don't think there was any footage of it, but I had this, I still think it's an interesting idea to play with, but I mean, you'll see where this is going in a moment, right? I went to school near Aldershot.
Yeah.
And around Aldershot was where, well, in Aldershot was where all the squaddies trained. But quite often there'd be big punch-ups in Aldershot because where, young men, trained fighters and whatever. Yes. Would go out in Aldershot, have a skinful, and it was quite renowned for that. If you went out in Aldershot, literally all of the shops had those big iron shutters that they pulled down at night. It's it's that kind of thing, and it was well known and widely understood to be the case in Aldershot around that time that was a thing, right? But then you got our soldiers, our boys, right? Our heroes. So you would both have this like help for heroes on the one hand, but also on the other hand, this idea of like batten down the hatches, for fuck's sake, don't let them in.
Support our boys, but from a distance.
And also that the advertising for the soldiers was largely like, did you do no business at school? Are you a fucking idiot? Does everyone think you're a nightmare, right? Yeah. Because all the advertising for join the army and whatever is, I was going nowhere in my life. I'd fallen off the tracks and whatever, and the army picked me up and sorted me out. So it was like, I was trying to do this thing where on stage, the riff was basically like, I think it was around the poppy season. I'm like, the greatest generation, they laid down their lives for us in 2 world wars. And as much as anything, it's got to make you think about our lads now, isn't it? Like, with where they're serving and what they're going through, think what you like about war and think about what you like about the politics of it. But those men and women serving overseas, I mean, they're heroes, aren't they? They're just heroes. I mean, I wouldn't want them anywhere near me, but I mean, they're absolute heroes. They are no, and then like playing off the feeling shift in the room. I'm like, no, because I all know that they're nightmares. I mean, they're absolute nightmares. You wouldn't want one in the house, but they're heroes. They're here. I mean, obviously they're trained to kill, and how can that not permanently damage your psychology? And that's why so many of them end up homeless, is because people just can't even bear to deal with them. Heroes, ladies and gentlemen, heroes. I mean, as long as we have nothing to do with them, as long as the moment they come back, we can just ignore them. Am I right? Heroes. And that was what I was trying to like play with, is the hypocrisy of not supporting people when they come back, and how who was recruited in the first place wouldn't be these. Anyway, I mean, I've given you the version that I can tolerate. But I thought in a minute now it's going to break and this is going to become unbelievably funny, and it just never did.
Never did. No.
And I eventually, after about 3 minutes of this, I literally just stopped and looked at the room and I went, "I'm so sorry. I thought this was going to turn a corner and was going to be funny, and it just hasn't been. And please don't think that any of the things I've just said, like,
Jesus,
in any way discredit. Like, you know, they really are brilliant people. I've got family in the services. You know,
Jesus.
This is not. I just thought it was. Oh God! And it, you know, being on stage and feeling not just that a piece of material hadn't gone well and, oh well, shrug it off, move on, you know, move to the next bit of material, but just to actually need to apologise to a room full of people.
Yeah, that's so I don't know if honestly, I can say I don't think I've ever apologised, but I can just see you being like, please don't hate me. The thing I need from this is you not to hate me. It's why I do this.
Yeah. I think there is a hypocrisy within. No, you get it. Fine. You just want me to shut the fuck up. Okay, I'm gonna go.
I will leave. I did a bit. So, well, the reason I got you on was so for us to talk about Britain's addiction to alcohol. But we're just going into the whole mental health aspect of doing stand-up now. I was at the Manchester store trying some new stuff out on a Sunday, which is a lovely little gig. And I did a bit about how they didn't film the third. They were going to make a third Ghostbusters in China, but they didn't because it would just be 90 minutes of Bill Murray crying while he busted little girl fetus ghosts. And I know, right? And that's what. And then I did. Busting makes me feel sad. Mime. And 50% of the room got it, and 50% of the room wanted me to leave now.
Yeah.
And luckily it was new stuff, and Toby Haydock's a lovely guy, and the compare came on, Toby, and he was like, "Oh, that was Chris, everyone. Thank you very much."
Mate, I mean, I think that's a solid joke. I don't think you should ever.
I thought it was a solid joke. I thought it was a solid joke.
You're definitely a certain sort of comic if that's what you're rolling out, but I don't think you're a bad comic if that's what you're rolling out.
I don't think you've ever watched any of my stand-up. I am that certain type of comic. That's the kind of stuff.
Well.
But
I mean, you're absolutely right. I haven't. So
I don't expect you to. Look, we were talking before this, and I think it's. To be fair, I think it was weird.
I was off the circuit by the point you were really on it, right?
What's that? Sorry. What? Sorry. Say that again.
I was off the circuit by the time you were really getting on it.
Yeah. I've only been going since 2009. So yeah, and again, I don't think it's rude to say there's a certain thing where comics are like, oh yeah, sorry, I haven't seen your stuff, and it was, oh dear, and really at the same time you don't see builders going like, wait, you see that house I built? I'm like, no mate, I'm nowhere near Westchester, I'm nowhere near Winchester, I don't know, I've never seen your house, mate. And you're not surgeons. Did you see that heart surgery I did 3 months ago? No, I've never. I'm a brain surgeon, I'm a neurosurgeon. I mostly work the neurosurgery circuit. There's no. I don't. I think it's not rude to say that. I think it's to not be aware of. Would be odd. But yeah, it's the awareness is there, especially as we literally stood next to each other, like years ago, and you couldn't remember it. That hurt. That hurt more than it should have. No, it did. No.
And when we got married.
And when we got married, and considering both of our names were on the deed to that mine. It hurts more. Can't remember it. Yeah, so I should have introduced the topic at the beginning, but I have on this. The viewers will know I've tried not to get stand-ups on and tried not to get comics on for the very reason that you end up like this. We end up chatting and we end up like having fun and because what I want to do is introduce a topic. And today you tweeted about Britain's addiction to alcohol, which is how. And I thought we would talk about what that is like, what that means for this country, but maybe in a more humorous tone, because there's two of us who do that.
Well, and also, I just fundamentally lack any expertise on this subject, but I do come at it from. I've done a bit of work over the years with an organisation called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition.
Right.
And that is people who've worked in various law agencies, you know, MI5 and the Met, Leicestershire Police. God, I mean, yeah, throughout British, you know, law and order, essentially.
Yeah.
Who have all been involved at one time or another with the war on drugs, and have all, as acts of conscience, come forward and said how we're dealing with this is just absolutely the wrong way. We're making a bad situation far, far worse in treating people with drug addiction, how we treat them. This should absolutely be a national health issue. It should be dealt with as a psychological issue. And not, you know, finding people who are selling marijuana or smoking marijuana and then criminalizing them and throwing them in prison. It's not even throwing them in prison. It's that, you know, once you've got that criminal record, then how able are you to get a job or hold down a job or get a mortgage or, you know, find somewhere to rent? So, you know, you take people who are unhappy enough with their lives that they've decided to start using drugs. And then you create a situation in which you make their lives less and less happy.
Yeah.
And there are people who already know where to get drugs.
Yeah, and they're all, and then you're surprised that they try to make it somewhat better in any way possible.
Yeah.
In the way they know. Well, sorry, you keep going.
So anyway, essentially, because of working with that organisation, I find there's a fascinating documentary that I was involved with as a result of working with them, which is on Netflix. I have this thing where the moment sometimes I'm called upon to say the name of something, it immediately disappears from my brain.
Yeah,
it's a psychological tick of being so terrified of saying the wrong thing that my brain just immediately hiccups. I have known the name of that documentary all the way in the lead up to telling you about it, but the moment I go to say the name of it, gone.
Well, we'll put it in the links underneath. We'll put it in the links.
Yeah. Well, if I just don't think about it, I'll remember it in 2 minutes. So
just a minute.
Yeah, but you know, the point that documentary makes is that there is now an entire industry around fighting the war on drugs that puts taxpayer money in private hands, in private prison system, in all of the equipment, in all actually running those teams, the buying, the fact that, you know, the DEA basically has tanks and attack helicopter and, you know, all of these things. It's like another branch of the military. And so people are making very, very good money for there being a war on drugs. It keeps the prisons full. It keeps the need for all this additional equipment, you know, high. But it exacerbates the problem. It makes gangsters incredibly rich. It makes terrorists in various countries incredibly rich. And, you know, there is then kind of bigger questions to do with how racist a lot of these policies are, because it certainly does favor a white supremacist when you consider the makeup of American prisons. I don't suggest the same is exactly true in the UK, but there does seem to be a certain trend, does there not?
Yes. It's not like anything important happened last year surrounding that at all.
Quite.
Yeah.
At all. Yeah. Or indeed, you know, some of the questions around how we respond to, you know, missing women when they're white versus missing women when they're black that we've, you know, seen recently as a society. You know, the expected health outcomes through COVID of non-white citizens, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, racist society. Pointing out other racisms, you know, it's like, yes, I think if you're even of moderate intelligence by this point, you've worked out that people of colour are doing less well in society than people who aren't.
But there has been a report that says that we're not racist as a society, and obviously it was the people doing the report that said that about themselves.
I got asked at the last minute to write an article in the Independent last weekend, and more or less the article I wrote was just like, but we live in a world where we can see the racism all around us, where black community leaders, one after the next, are talking about systemic racism in almost every aspect of our society.
Yeah, exactly.
And privately educated Etonians that run the gaff release a report going, no, everything's A-OK. Protect the statues.
Get around that statue. Get around it.
And we're meant to think like, oh, it's fine that these governmental departments are using taxpayer money to provide. Oh, well, that's an end to it then. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. Thank God we're not racist anymore. Oh, if anything, we're the best at not being racist anymore. Oh, great. And it's just so staggering to be so gaslit by these people at every turn about every last goddamn thing.
Badly as well. Not even like well gaslit. It's just so bad. I have experienced gaslighting, and I can say that these are novices. They're not even close to the levels of guilt that Catholic parents will give you. That's what they need to do. But I have given myself 5 stars for every Edinburgh show I've ever been on, and put that review in the Guardian, and that is exactly the same thing. That's what you need to do. 5 star. That on every post, a 5 star, and I just Edinburgh Fringe review first. Whatever combination of words, same thing. Just that's what you need to do every single time. Just it's like writing your best friend as your reference on your job CV, isn't it? So you get them to.
Yes. Yeah. Keep a couple of burner phones around, so that people can be contacted for just with tape on the back with this one is Ben Johnson from Aquatech, and this one is
I wish I hadn't chosen an accent for Pierre. Oh God, bonjour, just as we pick up.
Yeah. Just one of those plastic shoe racks hanging on the wall with all these phones on chargers with photographs of Guess Who characters taped on the back.
Guess Who characters, and that's a diversity board, and that is the racism investigation board, and that there is the corruption board. Bonjour, just as
no, everything is okay.
Everything. It's the least racist country in the world.
Mon Dieu.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, where was I going with all of this? I think ultimately that we just live in a world where somebody can test their eyesight disobeying the rules by going for a 30-mile drive, and then largely what you're told is no, that was always fine. Oh, your dad's gone to Portugal to his home overseas. Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. And it's like, well, but we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So then why aren't we all wearing masks? It is literally known by this point in human history that the countries, regardless of whatever testing, whatever else, but the countries that introduced masks early on had far, far lower rates of infection and death as a result. That the ones who went in very quickly, regardless of national lockdowns, were just masks, right?
Yeah.
The correlation is absolute.
Yeah.
Bring in masks early, death rate and catching it way down.
So
masks,
much data.
wash your hand. So much data on it that it is fact.
Yes. Yeah. It's
how the fuck do we live in a world where people are going on anti-mask marches?
Oh my God! Don't even. So I've never brought this up on the show because it's a situation that's going on at the moment, and we're all very passionate about it. But there's even now there's stickers. Someone's going around my town sticking up stickers with "No more lockdown." I'm like, mate, they're in the pubs. What do you mean, no more lockdown? This couldn't be less lockdown unless we were licking each other's eyes. How much more And what do you mean no more lockdown? And Lawrence Fox going on his bloody anti-mask march 2 weeks before we come out. You're like, mate, just wear it on your face. You don't get your dick out in Tesco's. What's the problem?
No. Well, you might not, but look who you're talking about.
I don't want to bring that up again. I know that it's still a fresh wound.
It's I mean, maybe this ties around more to mental health than what we were talking about, but it's I think it's that during all of this that has been so staggering. Is it one of the great guiding principles in my life has always been this thought I had when I was 15 at school. We were reading about the Nazis, and you learn about it all obviously in hindsight.
Yeah.
So when she said about 6 million Jews had died in the Holocaust, and the rise of fascism, who else were put in the internment camps were black people, and as we called them at the time, gypsies. I'm only not using the right parlance for it now because I don't know if that does refer to something specific, and that's who's been punished, but that's what I was taught at the time. Apologies if that isn't the right nomenclature for what that was. But I remember at the time, at age 15, thinking, why didn't they all run? Like, they must have seen it coming.
Yeah.
Like, just get the fuck out of there.
Yeah. But
and that sense in which, like, why didn't you have your eyes open? Why didn't you get out of there? And my history teacher saying, because that isn't how the world works, really. These things happen more insidiously. And it's one thing for you to see all of those things laid out one after the next on a page and go, my God, all the signs were there.
Yeah.
It's something entirely different to be living it and just be drip, 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 drip every day. And before you know it, like, shit, everything changed.
Just a bit. The thing is that some changes, so you say it's insidious, and some changes, this is the problem with it, is that some changes are good and some changes are bad. And that's how it happens, is where you say, like, people like Donald Trump being thrown off Twitter. Yes, that is just hate speech. Like, random hate speech is not great. But then people conflate that with telling jokes on Twitter. And you're like, no, that's people can tell jokes. They just can't hate people. And people are like, yeah, but they're the same thing. And the government is like, that's the same thing. And you're like, these are not the same thing. And because they're conflating them together, and that's I mean, I suppose that is expert gaslighting, actually, is what that is.
Well, I mean, now that we've come to the understanding that I haven't seen you perform, but you are the type of man that would tell a joke about ghost fetuses. The thing that really troubles me and does feel like has kind of fundamentally changed over the last 6-7 years is that there's no respect for jokes.
Yes.
People think, we have been told by people who don't get jokes that jokes are bad.
Yes.
But actually, jokes are how a vast number of us deal with the horror of being alive.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the fact that you don't get the joke, and now I'm not allowed to make the joke, but making that joke is the one thing that stops me from increasingly wanting to rip my own brain out of my head, is you're telling me that my coping mechanism isn't allowed. But actually, my coping mechanism is finely tuned. This isn't mental illness.
Yeah.
I'm not going mad. I'm sane. I am the one looking around and going, since the age of austerity in 2008, the rich got richer. The changes that have been inflicted on the health service are not as a result of there being less money in the system. There's just less money in the pockets of the 99%. that there should be, for us to pay our taxes, to earn better money, to pay our taxes to keep the system afloat. That money's not disappeared. That's been taken. That anguish of being able to know that as a fact, and for it just to not be put front and center in our national conversation about how we govern ourselves and how we organize ourselves as a society, that terror of the fact that I've grown up in a generation where we just took the NHS for granted. If you're sick, you just go to the doctor. But that very quickly we're going to find ourselves in a situation where that isn't around anymore.
No, really quickly.
I'll give you an example. A friend of mine's trying to get a GP appointment. They've had 3 phone calls and now they have an appointment to make an appointment. And I said to them, you know, there's this app now where for 35 quid you can video call a GP and it'll happen on the day. And it's like, and there you go. At the moment I thought it, I was like, oh, that's how they've done it.
That's how they've done it. Yeah, that's what you've done. What you're doing there is you've got, it's just because it's easier. And it's not, again, it's not your fault or no one's, that's how it is. It's that or the other way. You either have to never see a GP or you can, it's 35 quid. It's very easy to fix it that way around. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then we said, okay, so it's 35 quid, but actually, do you know something? We're going to have to, very good, very stealthy.
Yeah, sneaky. I liked it.
Yeah.
Dexterity check.
She got away with it. I could just see the bag sliding away.
It's fine.
Yeah. We're talking about Ghostbusters. I feel there's a force somewhere in
the room.
Are you doing the walk we've just done, but more rapidly? All right. See you later. No, that's right. I'm still podcasting.
It's all right. Yeah.
Will you edit this out, Chris?
No, we don't edit. I don't edit. So I can if you want, but we don't edit.
You want to end on a song or anything?
Just a big number. It's just real life happening in the background. It's just that kind of thing. It's good for the people at home to see you as a real person, Rufus, after everything.
Yeah, because I'm so grand otherwise. So me and my ivory tower.
It was the mine owning. That's the problem.
Yes, I think. Yeah. Well, we've all moved on.
No.
Yeah, I think it's that thing about people who don't get jokes, who don't understand that actually a joke is an expression of there is a concept that has power.
Yeah.
And I just want to kick the arse of whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
And sometimes that isn't kicking up, actually.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is kicking down. But on the whole, whether you're kicking up or down, the number of times you kick up or down will define whether you're an arsehole or not. Yeah.
And also, it's not just that as well. Sorry, it's like you can make a performance, and in it there are ups and downs. It's one joke, but it's a long bit, 5 minutes, say, or 3 minutes, and you have different parts of the joke, and they all add to the eventual punchline, and the eventual punchline is up. But some of those bits are going to be. They're going to be dark. They're going to take you to places that you need, because you need to go there in order to clarify the point at the end. I saw this because I've always had trouble justifying it, because I've always been a dark comedian. For those people, my audience will know some of my jokes, but one of them is about my family, and it goes, I grew up in a religious household. My dad's a lot like Jesus, except he turns red wine into domestic violence. And that's what we're talking about. And it's from my personal life experience, and people were always like, why can you tell a joke like that, but I can't tell a joke about how bad Chinese people are at driving? And I'd be like, I don't know why you think these are the same thing. Are you Chinese? No. And they'd always be like, oh, it's gallows humor. I'd be like, well, I have never seen that gallows that has the Chinese driver. But also, someone pointed out that gallows humor is if you're on the noose being executed, you have every right to make the joke about the execution. If you're in the audience watching, you're part of the execution. You make the joke.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a really good way of putting it. That's a real that defines the parameters of it better than I've ever seen. With the punch, I've always thought punching up and punching down is hard because you've got working class people. For like a lot of working class white people don't identify with Black Lives Matter because they're like, hey, I don't feel like I've ever been privileged. I, lived on beans.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah, but then again, I mean, unfortunately, I'm a simplist. So the moment you start saying that, I'm like, right. So we just get right back to it. Who you are should be met with kindness by the world.
Well, we haven't said that on here yet. We haven't said that on the record. We said that before. Yeah. So no, it's all right. It's because we had a big chat before. It just blurs the line, Rufus. It's the sign of a good conversation. It's where I'm not a very good conversationalist. I don't think comics are. I think that we're too busy waiting to get our next point in, which is just why it's better when it's two comics talking at each other.
Yeah, often true. Also, I think, I don't know how true you find this, but comics absolutely abysmal at small talk.
Yes. Awful.
I do not give a fuck about your wife and kids.
No, I do not get. And blunt about it as well.
Or your drive here, or your car, none of it matters. But I want to know your most embarrassing sexual experience. I want to know about the time that your mum accidentally shat on you.
Yeah.
These are the only stories that matter. Everything else is just ephemera.
Lockdown has made me worse at it because I haven't been I will immediately overshare because I haven't had the audiences that I'm used to. And also streaming has made that worse because I have an audience of my own followers who already know all the stories. So I go straight in with something. Today we were talking about crying. So the first thing you start with, we're opening a stream to the public. Anyone can watch, not here, but on live. And I'm like, right, so I cry at things all the time. I love a good cry. I cry here, I cry. And obviously, to most normal men, I say that's quite a weird subject for another man to start talking about. If someone's coming in and they're like going, I want to watch a stream on Fortnite, and I'm like, have you ever cried at Married Single Other? It's just not a. It's not a thing. The cancer, the bit that where she gets and it's just. But yeah, so I agree. We're awful at small talk. The first thing we want to say is something interesting, and we want to finish on something even more interesting, and that means it's true, right? That's true. And you don't want any other filler in between. You don't want to be like, I don't give a.
I realise the number of times in conversation that as I'm about to say my last word, I rock back on my back foot in conversation with people because I'm gonna land this last word and then I'm gonna walk, and I am timing it so that I'm like boom boom. I'm gone on the second.
Even worse is when you embellish normal stories. You've got, and we all do it, but because before I was a stand-up, I was like, never lie, 100% never lie, and I still stick to that. Don't lie, but I do embellish a lot. You'll tell a story and it'll be like, this would be better if there was this twist.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think I'm trying to remember. I think there is a famous quote of what I'm about to say where it's going to be put far more elegantly, but that there's people who want to know things read facts, and people who want to understand things read fiction.
Oh, and yes, I've recently read that.
It's basically that there's more. I've even phrased that not quite right. It's basically that there's more truth in fiction, because when you can actually go, this is what it was like, and not worry about all of the facts being right, you actually give a much better. I don't know. Do you know? Do you understand where I'm going?
I understand where you're coming from.
When you embellish a story, sometimes you're giving a far more truthful account of the thing itself.
Yeah,
the essential nature of the thing.
You're adding the feeling to it. which which the facts take away. So you're adding all of
Yeah,
the atmosphere, and you're adding the ambience, and you're adding the moment. Whereas with facts, they're just present. I'm a big fan of facts. Let's not straight. We're making a video here, Rufus. Let's not me going. I hate facts. Fuck them. I don't want that to be on my gravestone.
My only point is we live in a world where we no longer have facts.
Post fact, live in a post fact.
Post fact. We are a post fact civilization.
Most entertaining headline.
No,
Sorry,
I'm a big fan of objective truth. If that's what, if we need to clarify that in 2021,
no, we don't need that.
Yes, I like facts.
We like facts, but we both like facts. We're both kind of our online relationship. That don't make it rude. Started with you sharing a documentary. Which one am I? Which one am I? Which one am I? In that?
Do you know which one you are?
I'm the guy holding the camera. I'm in the car honking. Get out of the way. I'm never the fun bit. That's the thing. I'm always
what did you think that mine was, by the way? I was meant we generate electricity.
Oh, is that
you're
the
oil and I'm the. But anyway,
you're on the magnet. Is that?
Yeah, I immediately thought, hang on, is it that the copper's wrapped around a magnet and then the steel's in the middle, or is it still got the copper wrapped around it and the magnet goes up and down around the outside?
So
and I used to know.
Steel in the middle, copper thing, run a current through it.
And then the more I was holding my hands like that, the more obscene I thought that mime thing felt.
I'm just glad that you went finger. I'm glad you went finger and not full Kermit the Frog. I'm really glad that you did it.
It's not easy being green.
It's just, I literally have. This is the first time I've worn green on this show because we got rid of the green screen, so I could finally do it without looking like Max Headroom. So it's nice.
Yeah.
But so right, post-truth. We've got mental health show. We were going to talk about alcohol. That's gone. We talked a bit about addiction.
I'm doing my level best to keep you off topic. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. To be fair, this show has always had a very fly by the seat of our pants theme to it, and it's more about the people who are on the show and bringing and how they've experienced. Because like I said before the show, you've been a comedian, you're an actor, and a lot of other things, writer, and all those things. And notoriously, those entertainment-based jobs come with a full set of mental health problems or mental health issues. Have you suffered from any that you'd be comfortable talking about here? And if so, how have you coped with them?
Well, so I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that the mental setup one largely has in order to be a performer of one kind or another flies in the face of what one might call mental ease.
Health. Stability.
Yeah, it's just being able to get on with shit and taking things relatively lightly, applying oneself in a straightforward, organised and diligent manner in order for everything just to be a-okay. Is not really the character type that I have found in those people who specifically came through stand-up. I do actually see a bit more of it in the wider entertainment community.
So they like themselves a bit
actors, more. Well, I think actors are probably. I think the thing with comedians is that there is an assertion of oneself in the business of being a comedian.
Yeah.
Whereas as an actor, you're demonstrating a talent at doing something, but and receiving gratification for your talent at doing that thing. But it isn't it doesn't come from the same place.
No.
Like when I'm on stage in a play, my journey to my first line, or to my first moment of being on stage is, and now here I am, someone else. Here I am, Prentice. Here I am, Constant. Here I am, Sancho Panza. And this is my world, and now I have to be in the world that I am in, and I know who I am, and I know how to be.
Moscow's
Albeit grand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. It's like, and now I am become someone else. And yes, I still have this thing in my head where I've got to know that I stand in this place and I do this thing. It's not that I'm unaware of what comes next, but I'm just absolutely in each moment, and I am the character that I am playing in that moment. That is the skill of being an actor. When I'm on stage as me, I'm like, fuck, think of something funny to say.
Quickly! I need them to like me. I need them to like me.
They laughed a lot at the thing you did before the thing you just did, so think of something as funny as the thing you did before the thing you just said, you fucking idiot. Quick!
Do another one. I think it comes from... Patton Oswalt put it really well in that he said that stand-ups were the most fucked up because people say that if you've got daddy issues, you'll be a stripper, but being a stand-up is more fucked up because strippers show you their genitals, whereas stand-ups just talk about it. So if someone came out and said, if someone comes out and goes takes off their clothes, that's normal. Whereas if I just came out here and described my penis to you, it's so much more fucked up.
No, I'm going to disagree with Patton Oswalt on that. I am, because I think that once you actually show your genitals, then you're a stripper.
Right.
Like, from that point onwards, you just go, well, that is a thing I have done. And look, I have been friends with people who've worked in burlesque more than straight up strippers. That's only make the difference because that is how they have described themselves to me, not because of anything I would put on them. But I have been friends with people who've worked in burlesque, and they were largely untroubled by their work in burlesque. I've also been friends with people who've worked in porn, and they were not overly troubled by a lot of the work they've done in porn, but it was definitely a different, thing that they carried with them, right?
Yeah.
So, sex work is work.
Yes.
I'm not, and again, this comes with no moral or judgment from me at all.
No.
But I think that once you've actually got your dick out, then there's no coming back from that.
You think that's the be all and end all?
Well, no. I think that there is a thing. No, I don't think that's the be all and end all. I think it is about debasing oneself.
Right.
And I think, and a lot of it is societal judgment, totally.
Yeah.
But I think once you've sucked a cock for money, you are somebody who has sucked a cock for money.
Fair enough. But obviously
right?
There's a lot of different situations surrounding that.
Hey. Again, I really am trying to emotionally.
I know you are. Don't think of that.
Yeah.
I know that you're like, holy shit. No, don't worry.
No.
We're fine.
If you're out there sucking cock for money, you and me are still friends. Genuinely.
No judgment on that.
I'm just saying that it seems to be that once people go down that path, there comes a point where that path largely leads to people feeling debased.
Yes.
Now, maybe you suck 10 cocks for money in your entire life, and every time you suck a cock for money, you get £100,000, right?
Yeah.
And you retire and you live your life. You suck 10 cocks and now you live in a castle, and you from that point onwards in your life, you never think again about it. Like, whoop-de-doo, I would be delighted to know that that was regularly the case. I would love to know that most of our landed gentry got there through somebody at some point sucking enough cock that they were the Baron of here, there, or anywhere. Like all of that, fine. I'm just saying it doesn't seem to be, on the whole, that is the pattern, and that the people who do end up feeling othered and diminished and debased often exist on that kind of sex work spectrum. And there are all sorts of reasons why that would be better if it were not the case, and if we looked after people and respected sex workers' work.
Yeah.
But it just does seem to be the case. And I only make this distinction because in Patton's example, I think that once you reach that point of debasement, you kind of go, oh, that is part of who I am now. Now you can recover, you can repair, you can rehab,
Right.
you can rebuild.
Yeah.
But you get to that point. Whereas a stand-up, I think you just pick the scab and pick the scab and pick the scab.
Right.
And you never get to the point of like, okay, I'm there, it happens. And so I think that for as long as you keep making people laugh, you don't ever quite get to the point of going, oh right, no, I sucked that cock for the cash. Like
yeah.
I was down at the docks, and for literally half a bag of cold chips, I blew these 3 guys. I don't think you get to that level as a comic.
I think you start at that. I think that's the difference. You're like, because that sounds like that sounds like an old jongler's tryout. That's what that sounds like. But it also sounds like I'm not going to say any names, but I know a bunch of promoters where that sounds like part of the deal. You like have to go and do in the back room of a Midlands pub. You have to do it to no one for 3 minutes 18 times, and they never see you, and then they're like, well, if you do that 18 times, you can come in middle for 60 quid. And you're like,
yeah,
great. And you're like, that's moving up one. So you start low, and then like you start as far as you debate, because you travel into Hull for nothing to do 5 minutes.
I mean, maybe that is right.
Because what you're saying is,
but I mean,
top of your game. Jerry Seinfeld, let's say, makes a lot of money. I'm not a massive fan of his humor, but he is a very funny guy. He's very successful.
Sure.
People won't be subjective, you know. And Jerry Seinfeld, he is not where we're talking about in your the taking his genitals out to make money, but he might have taken his genitals out to get his first spot, because that wouldn't. Yeah. So what? They're just different journeys, buddy. That's all they are. They pass each other.
That is often how I kind of think sometimes about like someone like Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yeah.
Where we're all like fully on board with like really classy, really funny, truly great, one of the best. Right? Everyone's bought in on that. I'm like, what if one day she'd have just gone, I will give stand-up a go. Oh, she's smart and clever and funny and brilliant, right? She'd have been great.
Yeah. And
then maybe someone says, I'll pay you. And then she starts hauling her ass up and down the country for next to no money.
Yeah.
Working out how to translate how brilliant and smart and clever and funny she is. And basically is dragged down by various clubs. Like her shining brilliance is besmirched by the commercial reality of trying to do broadly appealing stand-up comedy. That arguably, if you're really funny, the last thing you need is to get up there and be a stand-up.
No, that's because it. Just do your own projects. This is something I got a lot of pushback on this a couple of years ago, because there was a point about 2-3 years ago where I was like, the crap gigs that I'm doing and I don't, and I'm saying crap because they work. So you do it. You did the circuit, so you know there was good gigs that you'd do, and they'd pay a lot, and you'd have a great time. And then there were the crap ones that you'd take because you kind of had to. They just were there, and you had to take them. And
what's that? Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday's free. All
Tuesday's
right,
always free. Yeah, it's 100
Yeah.
quid, and I have to drive to Plymouth. Cool. I love a 7-hour drive on a Tuesday. Love it. How long do you want me to do? 2.5 hours in an old people's home. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are crap gigs, but there was a point about 2-3 years ago where where I would have a crap gig. Instead of having that crap gig, like instead of having an empty Tuesday, I would fill it with a solo show somewhere in the country. And I'd just book a cafe or something like that, like a little tiny room for 25 to 30 people. And I'd just do whatever show I was writing at that moment. And I'd charge £5 a ticket. And it wouldn't matter if it was, if it was 20 people there. I'd make sure that it was within an hour or 2 hours of my home, so it was never like too far. And I live in the Midlands, and so it was like 100 quid on a Tuesday, which is a lot for a Tuesday spot within an hour or 2 hours of your home. And those gigs led to me doing all of this and streaming and stuff like that, and doing all of my online stuff because I got better for doing that because the bad gigs were making me worse. Like you say, you have to adapt it. You're not getting better. You're getting better with dealing with crowds, not writing good stand-up, which is...
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of the funniest people I've ever seen in my life have, been part of the stand-up circuit and stalwarts of it.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, I don't think that, I would hate for that point to detract on any level from the achievements of some sensationally funny people over the years who have absolutely thrived in that environment.
Yeah.
But I would largely agree that looking back, I mean, what I find interesting is I read an article not that long ago about young people and hearing Bill Hicks for the first time.
Oh God.
And the idea that there's a generation coming up behind me who hear Bill Hicks and think anything other than, oh my God, this man is God.
Yeah.
And instead think, yeah, all right, boomer.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I've had this conversation about Bill Hicks, about how you can't look at Bill Hicks now. You have to remember that he led the way especially in England. Bill Hicks is very responsible for our alternative circuit here in England. And you have to look at it from the fact that he was first. And the first one is never going to sound right 20, 30 years down the line. No one's going like, so the first surgeon, back to the surgeon analogy, first surgeon, he was the best. It's not that he's the way. You're standing on the shoulder of giants is what you're doing when you Carlin and people.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely bits of his material that are dated, but this is the problem, right? Or this is one of many problems, but somewhat the problem is that then I remember back to my dad when I was having a go at him in the 90s about liking I don't know, Jimmy Jones or Mike Reed. I mean, my dad was never really into Roy Chubby Brown or anything like that. But, a lot of those old-fashioned comics who, these three nuns walk into a pub. It was, my dad loved jokes, like old, barry, boozy, hoary jokes.
Yeah.
I say hoary there, Hoary,
just to clarify.
I'm getting shit for that. It was really clear. But my dad would say, absolutely, like the people telling those jokes, like the Englishman, Irishman, Scotsman jokes, or 3 Pakistanis or whatever he said. My dad would say to me, don't get me wrong, there were blokes telling them who were awful racists, terrible, awful racists. But there were a lot of people who heard those jokes and it didn't fill their hearts with hate towards those communities. It was that they were new here and we didn't really know how to respond, but it didn't increase hate or stir up division. if anything, it was some people's first exposure to an idea of like, oh, they're here, are they? And now, I'm not, again, I really, really need to be very clear. I am not saying this is fine or it was okay, but all I mean is it having these conversations about somebody like Bill Hicks suddenly makes me a bit reminiscent of my dad saying some very similar things about how generationally, you know, it was different and things shifted and you don't hear it with quite the same ears and the world wasn't quite the same place.
But your dad had those conversations with you, and he's saying he's hearing the world with different ears. That's a great sign. That's a progress. He heard, if he's listening to it, he's hearing it at the time, he's laughing, because at the time that was the world. He's hearing it 20 years later and he's like, ooh, actually that's not quite acceptable anymore. Then that's progress. That's progress in the world, and we like that. Same as like with Hicks. Hicks was great at the time, and then and I agree. I still think a lot of his stuff great, but again, I think that it's because I heard it, you know, way back then, and so I can apply it. Whereas now, if I listen to it now for the first time, with all of the knowledge I have now, I'd be like, whoa, dude, whoa. But you know, I've known even Carlin, and he was way more politically correct than Bill Hicks. But even Carlin, you listen back to Carlin, and you think, yeah, fantastic stand-up. But then if you were to listen to it now, you'd never heard it before, you'd be like, yeah, mate, you just need to, you're almost there. You're almost there. you got enough.
Imagine the audacity. Say to George Carlin, like, close, man, close.
So close. Imagine the arrogance. George, mate, as he comes off the stage from the arena,
some notes,
George Carlin. You're in the cell next to him after he's been arrested for what was it? He was arrested for blasphemy, and you're in swearing. It was for swearing, wasn't it, on stage?
Yeah.
I've realised we're over an hour now. We normally only do these for 45 minutes. And you've got a life, and we've seen some of it in the background, which has been good. So thank you very much. We'll say thank you. Rufus, is there anything you want to point people towards in your own career at the moment? Is there a project you're working on that you want to tell everyone about, or anything?
Not really.
Not really. Just go find you on Twitter. Go find you on Twitter.
Even then, I would probably ignore me. I mean, you know.
I'm just going to put underneath. I'm not even going to put your website. I'm just going to put he's Rufus Hound. Google him. That's all I'm going to put.
Yeah. At the point where things really do come back and there is actual work, then I'll be able to tell you about things. But until that point,
we'll edit it. We'll edit it. It'll just be. We'll be like 10 years from now, both of us very different coloured hair, just at the end, edited onto it. Oh yes, I'm doing a project. The Drury Lane. I've
started a podcast. Thank God we held on to that in mind. Because the EPG attack in late 2022, and we finally put the second half of this podcast together.
I had to strip all the cobalt out of all of the mobile phones I found in the last radioactive dump. But we're there. Yeah. Transmit to our roach overlords.
Well, look, let me know how your listeners feel about this chat.
I think that they will let themselves know, but I think this has been a great. Thank you very much for being on here.
No, but if this was useful, then I'll come back and we'll just talk more shit, not on the topic of mental health, shall we?
Yeah, probably. We could do that. We could do that anyway. There's always a chance to do things like that. I'll just say thank you very much to everyone. Thank you very much for coming and listening to me and Rufus get off topic on many different ways. We'll be back next week with more mental health bar. Thank you very much.